Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kevin Hebert. I'm here on behalf of Changing the Flow, and I want to take a moment to thank everybody that's here. As people continue to enter, we will get started, and you will hear momentarily from our magnificent co-host, Jill from Days for Girls. For levity, I want to point out for anybody that can see my screen properly, if I just move this way, there we go. We have a beautiful shirt, and yes, it is a uterus. It's an airbrushed picture of a uterus that a local artist did for me, and we may start selling in our store one day. That's how much we like it. So the event, what is happening in public policy, menstrual equity in Canada, is something a little bit different for Days for Girls Canada and Changing the Flow, in that we're going to do our breakout rooms for the very first time. We've always done webinars. So thank you for coming along this journey with us. We're going to start together as we are now. In a few moments, we will go to our breakout rooms. We will come back to end together. Both rooms will be recorded. So if you're in one, you'll be able to watch the other one later. And at this time, I do want to start with a land acknowledgement, and bear with me because I'm going to read it to ensure I say everything important that I want to say. And I'm going to begin by acknowledging, first of all, that the Indigenous peoples are the traditional guardians of this stolen land that we call Canada. As a settler, for me, every day is about learning more and understanding what role I can play to come eventually to a true reconciliation. I strongly encourage, if any of you listening, if you have not gone to native-land.ca, you can do that and put in where you are physically located, and you'll get information about the Indigenous lands that you are on and a bit of history that you can research. Where I am situated today is commonly known as Waterloo Region in Ontario. It's located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people. Waterloo Region is part of the Haldimand Tract, which encompasses 6 miles or 10 kilometers on either side of the Grand River. And this land was promised to the Haudenosaunee Confederation on October 25th of 1784 to compensate for the loss of lands in upstate New York when they allied with the British, who were defeated in the American Revolutionary War. Today, Waterloo Region is home to Indigenous people from many different First Nations, as well as Métis and Inuit. Please understand and support the many Indigenous initiatives, such as locally here, Land Back Camp. And I'm going to place a link to that so you can find out a bit more in the chat afterwards, and understand and listen to the demands and learnings that local Indigenous communities are offering to us. On that, I would like to welcome my co-host, Jill Johnston, to join me. Welcome, Jill.
Myself. There we go. Thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here with you, especially after all the work you've done. It's a pleasure. Hi, everyone. I am Jill Johnston. I'm the advocacy coordinator for Days for Girls Canada. It is my pleasure tonight to welcome you to our event on behalf of Days for Girls. This time is the 4th time that Changing the Flow has generously collaborated with Days for Girls Canada to bring an event to you. And we're delighted to see so many of you joining us regularly. Newcomers also, very impressive to see the new people coming. Our growing numbers mean a clearer and more significant voice advocating for menstrual equity in Canada. We have an amazing lineup for you tonight, and we hope to hear and see you joining in the conversation. Each of you has joined us this evening with opinions and expectations of your own about public policy as it applies to menstrual equity in Canada. Maybe I get rid of that. So we're going to try and do something different. For the first half of tonight's event, you will be in one of 2 rooms. In room A, participants will be exploring our topic through a grassroots lens. Julia, the communications officer for Days for Girls Canada, will be the group facilitator, and she will provide you with 2 prompts for discussion. You will hear from several presenters about the accomplishments, policy expectations, and the work that is yet to be done. Julia will introduce a special guest who will co-facilitate with her. The prompts for the grassroots room are, number 1, from a grassroots perspective, what has been accomplished so far on the policy side? And prompt number 2, given the opportunity, the following should be included in new policy. In room B, participants will examine our current situation in menstrual equity through a policy lens. Melissa is the chairperson. Melissa is the chairperson of the BC Federation of Students. She will facilitate and provide 2 prompts for discussion. You will hear from invited guests about policy updates, new developments, and ground yet to be covered. The 2 prompts for the policy segment are, number 1, now that the election is behind us, the best way to hold the government to account for their pre-election promise of $25 million is, and the second prompt is, to achieve menstrual equity in Canada, we still need to. So as you can see, they're sentence completions, they're conversation starters, and we hope that everybody will get involved. After those 2 sessions, which run parallel to one another, we will conclude with a plenary session offering each group the opportunity to hear from the other and to respond. Facilitators Ariel Kayabaga and Rachel Ettinger will ask one final question of all attendees. We are excited to hear your conclusions. I hope everyone has a really productive and successful evening. And Julia and Melissa, would you please now meet your groups?
The grassroots and between policy breakout rooms and kind of what we just discussed in the past 20 minutes or so. Is everybody aligned with that? Can we see some thumbs up? Okay, perfect. And I guess we can maybe start with the first prompt. It goes out to the grassroots breakout room. And I know Ariel, obviously, please jump in on this discussion too, because this is your jam. From a grassroots perspective, what has been accomplished so far in terms of the policy side? And so I know this was discussed. I think there's going to be someone from that breakout room kind of speaking for the group. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we'll go to either Jillian or sorry, we're home. We'll go to either Jillian or I'm looking for maybe Mayor. Mayor, do you want to take this?
I showed up in the last 20 minutes. I feel like I'll miss a lot of it.
Okay, Jillian or Julia, do you guys want to take it?
I think Julia has the notes, and so she could probably start, and then Al Kibitz.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I just kind of jotted down some of the points that we talked about.
Awesome.
We talked about how the tampon tax has been addressed over different parts of Canada and different parts of the world even. So yeah, that's one thing that kind of started out small, because eventually the goal is to, make period products free for everyone. So yeah, if anyone has, well, that was one of the points that we had. And then I know someone, I think it was Mayor someone brought up stigma associated with menstruation. And although it's got a long ways to go in Canada, we are lucky enough to live in a country where it has been addressed to a certain extent. So yeah, that's kind of a small grassroots initiative starting to address stigma and advocacy and education. And then there was a lot of talk about funding for period products in schools and in all of the washrooms, not just the women's washroom.
Mm-hmm.
If Nikki Hill could talk about the United Way BC funding for all period products in schools. I know that was a topic that we talked about, if Nikki Hill's here, but.
She is, Nikki. You've been voluntold.
Sorry to call on you, but that was an interesting topic.
Nikki, do you want to jump in and chat about from your experience with the schools in BC? And hopefully she's still in this chat. I know she was in the chat before, but.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
There you are.
Was it the specific question about how that came to be or how it's rolling out?
How it came to be. Yeah.
I think, one of the big things, and I think this goes, there's a number of people who are in this session who had different roles in the BC movement, but I think really the biggest lessons behind it, and probably where we are in terms of changing the federal policy space too, is you have to create the understanding of why, right? And I think when we've all started doing some of this work a few years ago, there was a low awareness about why this is an issue, why there should be menstrual products in schools, why we needed to be talking about period equity and period poverty as issues. And so I think really in terms of how we got some of the change in BC was a collection of people coming together from different angles. So whether it was organizations like Period Promise, who are really focused on trying to create the profile and bring more people into understanding that this was a critical issue at a grassroots level with labor, with others, and spreading the word and talking to media at the same time as people like Dr. Tribe, who was just talking about some of the work that she did in her child's school, and then talking to other schools about installing dispensers. And then while policymakers were, I think a number of elected, really progressive policymakers were elected around the same time, who understood the issue much more quickly than others. And when we went to them and we asked them to partner with us and create change, it was an easier conversation because they already understood why equity was an important discussion and how this fit into the context. So, between New Westminster, that was the first school board, soon after that, because of all of these, perfect storm of people around the province caring about the issue, then the province was able to move. It certainly wasn't easy, but it was, I think, just layers of the needed components that fit together at the right time. I said in the group that the other part is it's not perfect. And I think the pandemic's made a lot of policy not perfect. And so implementation was really due for late 2019. 2020 was, I don't even know what year we're in anymore with the pandemic. So, we know we need to go back and see how it was implemented and see where those gaps have appeared. And that's really important part of public policy as well, is holding, the systems accountable, making sure they're actually being implemented in an equitable way, in the way that we intended, which is inclusive and accessible. But yeah, I think, many hands lifted up this project.
Yeah, no, thank you, Nikki. That's super helpful to hear. And that's kind of a great example of, like you said, all those pieces, of course, coming together to enable that change as a province. And like, as many of us know that are in Ontario, obviously we haven't had that yet. I know, like, I've been a part of several different initiatives, but there have been many others. And it's all been, a group of people just trying to advocate from this, starting with maybe even one person. I know in my instance, a great mentor of mine, he came to me and said, how do we do this? And we did it together. But we had the support of council members, for example, of the school board. But it's really difficult to get to all those steps, especially from, I know I had never dealt with the schools or the school boards before. And, that is really tricky too. And there's a lot of work there that has to be done, at every level in terms of, elementary, high school, school board, university. And so we're all kind of doing it like piecework currently, which is, takes a lot of effort. So hoping that from an Ontario perspective, we can have something like where, in what happened in BC and a couple other provinces, just so that it can be, of course, mandated versus all of us doing all this hard work kind of separately, trying to support each other, but ultimately it's difficult depending on where you live. So that's a great example right there, Nikki. So thank you for that. And then we switching to now the policy breakout room, we'll go to a first prompt there. So with the election now just kind of behind us, what is the best way to hold the government accountable for their promise of for example, the $25 million Menstrual Equity Act, and then also providing the products for free in federally regulated workspaces? So does somebody from the group I joined quickly want to jump in on that one?
I can jump in.
Awesome, thank you.
So I think definitely contacting your local MPs and seeing if they're following through with their campaign promises and checking in with them throughout the whole period. I think that kind of keeps them accountable to what they have promised and making sure that you're voicing that this is something that matters to you. So the more that elected officials hear from people that there is an issue, the more support they have to make the policy changes and make access to products not an issue and make it accessible for folks. So I think that's definitely one of them. And also changing the framing for equity, for menstrual equity to emergency menstrual products. That shows that there is a need for these products to be available, and really making that language really obvious, why we need this available in bathrooms. And just checking my notes. Yeah, also support policy changes. So this would look like building code regulations and looking at federally regulated workspaces to actually make that policy change within that. So one of the promises that the government has made is making these products available in federal workspaces. So making sure it's actually occurring and it's actually being followed through. I think that's what I have for that.
I love that. There's so many.
I want to add
go
something.
ahead, Ariel. Yeah.
Melissa, I think you've made some really great points. But I also just want to add maybe something that people could think about. Also just revising the policy after, doing a plan on revision around 6 months, 12 months, and, a term or 2 terms, and seeing how, either politicians who may come in the next term, or once there's been some piloting project a year after, which is something that I know on the city at city level we did a lot. We would take on pilot projects, and we can do a revision to see what kind of improvements we can add. So I really like the language thing you just talked about. So I just thought maybe we should continue to revise the policies that we put out to make them be more relevant to what's happening in our lives. And so really great points, but just wanted to add that. And happy to work with anybody as a newly elected MP. I'm representing London West, but I'm super happy to work with anybody who wants to continue to work on this.
Love that. Yeah, so excited. I saw your sign when I was there really quickly for an hour in London. I was so excited. I'm just going to read a couple of the comments because they're awesome. From Nikki, a good one, thank politicians when they take a big step, and we celebrate the fact that the BC government made us a global leader all the time. Don't take credit for ourselves, but we need politicians to step up and speak for us and support. So that's a great point. And then also the point about collaboration. And I think we'll get back into that when we get to the grassroots prompt again, because I think that's like the biggest piece. And I think even as someone in this space, I struggle with that one the most, because how can we all support each other in our, all of our different efforts across Canada? Like, I know it's such a nice to do, like, how do we do that? But I still believe there's, like an event like this, ways to do that, because that is so important. So Suzanne and Nikki, 100%. And I'm just looking really quickly here, any other we can chat about. Government can remove tariffs on imported menstrual products, which will bring down the retail prices in stores. That's from Selena. That's a great point, actually. Yeah. And then most of the people working at a federal level can afford these products. They need to start helping those who can't. And I think that's a great point that also has been discussed with the federal government taking this on. And it's not just like it's such a twofold. I know we've probably already chatted about this, tonight, but there's times when folks are not prepared, regardless of whether or not they can afford menstrual products. There are times when all of us have been unprepared for our period. And then also this is such a domino effect for many folks to be able to afford, or to be able to provide in federally regulated workspaces for schools and other businesses to follow suit. And of course, we never know, what goes on, whether people can afford dinner or menstrual products or all these things, right? We don't know everyone's circumstance, but it's a great step towards getting menstrual products in the hands of those who can afford them. So I think we'll move on to the second prompt for grassroots group. So given the opportunity, the following should be included in new policy. So we could come up with some elements that we believe should be included in new policies. Does someone want to, again, represent the grassroots group?
Yeah, I can read out the notes that we talked about. So
awesome.
The kind of main goal that I think was consensus between the group is equal accessibility for menstrual products and free sanitary products in all public places. So that seemed to be kind of the overarching main goal. And a parallel that was brought up a couple times was between toilet paper and menstrual products in washrooms. No one would question the necessity of toilet paper in a washroom, but when it comes to menstrual products, there's that everyone's questioning the necessity there, and they're the exact same thing. Someone brought up the fact that men walk into a washroom and they have everything that they need when they walk in there, and women do not. So it's as simple as that. And then someone also brought up a really interesting two-pronged argument for what should be included in new policy. I believe it was Donna. She talked about education, first of all, how many men and even women aren't even aware of what period poverty is. So, and we often find men in positions of power where they have the opportunity to make these changes in policy. So it's important to educate them and educate women and men on period poverty and making sure that they know what it is. And then also, because money is motivating, is what a comment was in one of the discussions. So a tax break to make menstrual products free in businesses would motivate people in business. And I thought that was a really great point and could be implemented in new policy. We also talked about dignity a lot, and that every menstruator should have the opportunity to manage their periods in the way that the specific way that they want to manage their period, because having a choice is empowering. And so that should be included in policy. Yeah, those were kind of the main points we talked about. If anyone else wants to join in, if I missed anything, go ahead.
Yeah, please jump in. Otherwise, I'm going to read a couple of the comments here. Nikki says, oh yeah, a few groups have policy agreements like the period promise that gets organizations and businesses to sign on saying they're going to provide menstrual products. I am seeing like some sort of startups starting to provide like a menstrual products fund or that type of personal fund, giving employees the opportunity to be able to use that money to purchase menstrual products, and then obviously providing them in office too. It's not happening quick enough for sure. So I agree, awareness for just individuals in general about what this means and why from the equity perspective. And then also awareness for those in positions of power, but why this is an equity issue for all folks and all people who menstruate. So I totally agree with all those points. Those are so necessary. And it's like there's a little trickle, but I'm really excited for when all of this comes into fruition with the government, because I think that's going to be really, really important. Ariel, do you have anything to jump in on here, or anybody else? And then if not, I can move into the final prompt.
No, I was on the team with them, so I sort of
perfect.
agree, with most of the things that they said. I was a little interested to think about. I know that money is motivating in a lot of things. We live in a world that functions around money, but I wondered how tax breaks would contradict the work around equity. But it was a really great comment and great points people made.
Yeah, because we want to equate it to kind of toilet paper in that sense that it should just be provided because it's a part of our health. So we wouldn't want to give more. It's sad that we should have to give that type of incentive, like hopefully we don't.
Right. I was thinking about it that way,
yeah.
like the incentive part of it, where we have to once again justify or explain why we menstruate. And I don't think I think that kind of sets us back a little bit. And I want this to continue to be progressive, where we are talking about something that happens naturally for our bodies, and we shouldn't have to pay the price of needing to use sanitary pads, just like we would need to. Nobody has to pay to use toilet paper. I mean, in Canada, there's some countries where people do, but in Canada, nobody needs to pay to use. And I really like that bathroom toilet paper metaphor. So it's the same thing. So I wonder if incentivizing it would then bring us back into a space where we are sort of having to explain again why we menstruate, and yet it's part of the ecosystem of how we live in this world and how we reproduce and bear children and recreate, right? So that was a little, and I know money motivates people, but I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about this one, because this, again, it's like mansplaining, right? Like we have to once again explain why this is important to us. And
100%. And Donna, I'll get to you in 1 second. I just want to read out this comment. Yeah, Neil's like, businesses don't need additional tax breaks, that's for sure. And Suzanne says, and no one is stealing it. Isn't that interesting? And I remember when we first started doing a lot of this work, it was always, well, people are going to steal them. And I remember thinking like, that's so counterintuitive. Like if they need it, then that emphasizes how much of a problem this needs to be addressed, right? If people are taking 10 pads at once, this shows that we need to continue to do this, because obviously folks cannot afford them, and we need to get them in the hands of those who need it. So I remember it's like that kind of mentality, right? And it's like, no, we need to actually understand this and not just react to it. Donna, I know your hand's up, so please go ahead.
And Rachel, just quickly, someone called me Lamise. I just want to apologize. I'm logged in as Lamise because that's my assistant. She signed me up, but I'm Ariel, not Lamise. I'm going to write my name in the chat box.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. This is Ariel, yes. Donna, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm basically, for anyone who wasn't in the group I was in, I'm in the UK. Is this a good place to sort of let you know what's kind of happening here with stuff? Or is it better if I put it in the chat box or email you, whatever? Is it okay, Faye?
Yeah, jump in on a couple of things. We've got keep it brief so we're not too late. They'll get mad at me.
Sure. So, well, yeah, it's 1:20 in the morning here, so it might be a bit gibbery. Basically, there are people here trying to do something about period poverty, particularly in schools, but it's still quite gender biased. Some people are trying to do something about that to make it to all, but there are also a cadre of people who are saying, well, we should have products, but only for girls, and there's just a whole load of transphobic bollocks around it all, basically. So if anybody from overseas would like to get involved here and support the people who are actually trying to make it properly equitable, that would be really good. even in supermarkets here, they're not even just called feminine products, they're called feminine hygiene. It does my head in. There's nothing dirty about periods. Lots of people have them. And the combination of feminine and hygiene just has me pulling my hair out. And somebody was saying earlier about like sustainable products. And again, there are quite a lot of people here trying to work on sustainable products, even things like doing tampons without plastic in, but they're all very kind of gender biased names. It's like you go in a zero waste shop here and all the sort of free from products are all called things like Girl Squad, and and they're all very pink packaging, and yay, periods are cool. And I understand why they're trying to bypass it, but they're kind of cutting out other people in trying to get home to girls that actually periods are fine and natural, but they're going down a very narrow path of what that means. So I think that's more or less it, really. So if anybody wants to kind of keep an eye on what's happening here and sort of nudge people along a bit in the sort of the right direction, shall we say, rather than what we've currently got, which is just some half-assed transphobic nonsense, that'd be really good. So yeah, that's that. And yeah, it's 1:20, so I've got to log out because I'm just dying on my feet here. So thank you for this. It's been really interesting seeing what's going on, because we frankly hear nothing about Canada here. It's like you're never at war with anybody, so nobody gives a shit. So
hilarious.
Yeah.
Thank you,
cool.
Donna.
Thank
that
you.
was so good. Thank you for
night,
sharing.
people.
And yes, please go to sleep because that is very late. Thank you for
Bye.
joining, and thank you for sharing. Absolutely. And I mean, we still have a long way to go also here in Canada, of course, and some great points made in the chat, like still just about being aware of using inclusive language. Very, very important. I think I would like to hope that we've made an impact with awareness with all of the amazing advocates over the years, but I think there's still many folks that still we all need to be conscious of our language as well and kind of explain it from an equity perspective. So completely agree. And so to our final prompt, which is for the for the policy side, right? Hopefully I got that right. To achieve menstrual equity in Canada, we still need to blank. So what are some ideas in order to achieve menstrual equity in Canada?
Yeah, so I have a few that the group put together.
Awesome.
So one is focusing on telling the story of period poverty. And with this, I mean actually humanizing the problem and not just like say many like products, but I think like when we're talking about like menstrual equity, like we have to realize that not everyone is like struggling, and like the ones that aren't are usually like at the top. So it's good to kind of like humanize the problem so they're actually understanding why there is a need for these products, and also like hearing stories actually makes the problem makes you actually understand why we need it. So I think that's definitely one thing. The other one is also removing tariffs on menstrual products, and also educating and encouraging the use of an environmental friendly period products. We also talked about how period poverty isn't just a women's issue; it's everyone's issue. So that's definitely one thing that in our group we also like touched up on. And I also have here like within the organization that you work at, like how far are you with policies within that? So really starting from like bottom and like working to the top. But yeah, those are the things that I have.
Those were all great points. I mean, there's so many things to do. Go ahead, Ariel, and I'll conclude once I can see you on it. Jump in, please.
I was not on the policy team, but I think just wanted to add on the great things that Melissa just added, perhaps choice. This is something that I think on our group we talked about a lot, providing the dignity of people having choices. I think when we, a lot of times when we talk about, providing things for people who need them and making them more accessible, we tend to provide what we want and what our agenda is and what we want to push. But I would say that allowing people to menstruate in their own dignity and making sure that they are making a choice. So I think that's really important. And like understanding that we all come from different backgrounds, we have different needs, we have different cultural standards and all that stuff. So just providing many options, and understanding as well that from a poverty perspective, people already have those stigma that they have to live with. So allowing them to feel dignified and making the choice that they want to make in terms of how they want to, what products they want to use and how they want to use them. So I find that really important, because I've watched a trend where we're really pushing the sustainability, and I'm all for it, you know, because I believe that we need to live in a greener world, but there are people who are not there yet. And I would welcome the idea of allowing them the right to choose which product they feel is appropriate for them in that moment, so that they can get to a place where they evolve and decide they want to be sustainable. But until when they're still dealing with certain things that come with from lack and living maybe precarious lives or coming out of poverty, there are people who may not be interested in using sustainable products because it may not be sustainable for them to have those products. So just really wanted to mention that, because we're talking about menstrual equity, and that is something that we maybe from a place of privilege not understand why someone may not want to use that product. And I think I've had this conversation with a couple of organizations that are, you know, really being sustainable, which I love, but they're leaving out the part where in equity, you have to allow the opportunity for people to make that choice, because you don't know what their lives are like at home and what they can and cannot take on. So just wanted to really point that out.
So well said. Absolutely accurate. Again, I reiterate that, like, so many great companies is finally, you know, in Canada, we have options when it comes to menstrual products, finally. And I love that, you know, more companies are being sustainable. So you're absolutely right, Ariel, but we still need to get menstrual products, first of all, into the hands of folks so that people have them, and then also to be able to menstruate with dignity. So completely agree. And I think there'll be a lot of amazing conversations down the road once we get products provided in washrooms, in schools and municipalities, provinces, workplaces, etc. But yeah, those are great points. I think that's the foundation of what we're trying to achieve too. So that's awesome. And we have so many awesome, everybody make sure to put your handles and contact info in the chat so that we can keep in touch with each other. And I know there's so many great comments saying, you know, well said, sometimes, you know, green products are really a luxury, and a lot of folks, you know, can't afford those options depending on where they live or their situation. So that's so true. And there's so many great comments. And Kevin, I know we went kind of close to time, so please jump in. We could probably go on forever.
It's totally cool. Thank you so much. Just very briefly, I was going to suggest that we just follow our agenda for the sake of anybody that's on a tight schedule. So we have a very small closing segment, but we're going to keep the room completely open. So we'll do our closing. Please stay and we can resume this. And, you know, as they say, I'm here all night. Try the periods. I don't know what that means. Okay. So I'll go back on mute. So if you can hand it to our surprise guest closer, Ariel and Rachel, and then that person will close, and then we'll resume after.
Am I supposed to know who the special?
No, they'll know because they'll just start talking.
Okay, because I was like, I don't even know. It's very surprise. Okay.
I just play around.
Ariel, introduce our surprise. I'll let you do it. Even though it is a surprise, just say surprise closer, jump in.
Okay, surprise closer, please jump in.
It's me. Hi, Amarit Stiles here, and I'm the member of provincial parliament for Davenport in Toronto, in Ontario. I'm a member of the official opposition NDP here, and I'm the Ontario education critic. And thank you, Kevin, for inviting me. I was kind of stuck in the legislature quite late. So he said, come and be a surprise final guest. So I'm just thrilled that I was able to join you all this evening. I see lots of folks I know here already and lots of people I didn't know. And I was really enjoying the conversations that are taking place here tonight. Look, all of you, everybody who's here tonight are change makers, right? That's why we're here. And even those who've joined from across the pond, we're all change makers. And these opportunities that we have here today and tonight are super important and will continue to be important, because this is not an issue that started overnight. Let's be clear. We didn't all just wake up and have a large percentage of people in the world menstruating. But what we have really started to see, I think, in the last 10, 20 years, maybe, is that we're turning a corner. I really do think we are. When you look at the tampon tax days, when Olivia Chow and Canadian menstruators were really pushing some of these issues, to right now, where you've got students, student trustees here in Ontario, and others really pushing and making policy from the ground up, from local schools to school boards, and then pushing it up to the provincial level, and then maybe the federal level. And that's so exciting to me as a provincial policymaker. And I wanted to say, I was on Twitter this evening, and Ahmed Ali posted this comment. He said, "What I love about public policy is that it reminds me a better, more just world is possible. What I hate about public policy is that the suffering we see today is a policy choice." And that's so true, right? These are all choices. Governments make choices every day, and they prioritize issues and they prioritize people. And unfortunately, people who menstruate have not been prioritized. And menstruation has not been prioritized as a policy issue. It's been, as we know, and we've talked about so much, it's been hidden away, it's been buried, it's been something embarrassing. And I really do feel, and I want to just also stop for a moment again and again recognize all the young people who have been really, I think, extremely brave and awesome in moving some of these issues forward in a way that I think my generation maybe, didn't quite get there. And I'm so excited to be able to support everyone as much as I possibly can. Look, I'm here because I'm really here to let you know that the next event is open now for early bird registration. The link to register is on the screen, November 30th, eventbrite.ca. I'm going to encourage you to register now. I think we are accomplishing so much in having these conversations. The event itself is called It's Great to Advocate, and it's going to feature some practical training, tools for advocating for menstrual equity and menstrual health. And I think it's going to be amazing. And, I see Suzanne and others in the chat here reminding us that we need to hold policymakers, people like me, to a higher standard. Excuse me. We need to demand more. We need to demand better. And as I said, we didn't just wake up one day and have the majority of the population being people that menstruate. But we have started to turn a corner, and it has taken many years of organizing. And it all starts, I believe, and my kind of theory of organizing is that it all starts with these conversations. And most importantly, it starts with listening. If we could get the non-menstruators to listen a little more, that might help. And things might change more. But we really have to also listen to each other. And I thought there were some excellent comments and thoughts on that just in the last discussion that took place here. We need to listen, and then we need to organize. We need to build a movement. And to do that, we need to make these connections across the country, in our communities, across our provinces, across the pond, right? And the big and the powerful are always going to fight change. They're happy with the status quo, right? For lots of the reasons you've talked about tonight. So it's only when all those little fish come together, you think of that school of fish coming together, and how that's all those thousands of little tiny fish actually kind of form a bigger mass than the big fish. And that's when we really succeed in making change. So I think that's what this next session is going to be about. It's going to be super important. I just want to thank all of the organizers tonight, the attendees, the presenters, and also all of my fellow elected officials who joined us here this evening too. It's been amazing to listen in as always, and thank you so much to Changing the Flow for putting this on again. Kevin, thank you, and everybody else. And I'm going to turn it back to the organizers now, because I know there's going to be some conversation continuing, but please, join us again for that important next step. And let's talk about how we advocate.
Thank you so much, Merritt. Thank you. And Bardish is clapping enthusiastically. See, this is how stuff gets done. And I don't know if you guys noticed looking at your screens, the gender parity that is what it should be, right? Bring a couple of, Neil, I'm glad you're here. And I know we had Phil, and I'm in no way trying to denigrate any individual males, but look at this. Like, this is reality. You are really here now, and look how much gets done. Look how productive of a discussion on either end. And it continues like this for hours. Like, I mean, hello. Anyhow, the piece I want to add is thank you. A big thank you to Days for Girls Canada. Jill and Julia are representing, but they are instrumental in co-organizing this as well. And yeah, literally, the big lesson that, again, many of you specifically, but all of you collectively have taught me one thing, is to learn to share space. And literally, I can just suck it all. Like I mean, it's a natural thing that I could do. So I could keep talking all night here, and that would be probably not the best way to end a menstrual equity group. However, one day we will get there where we'll have a bunch of men listening, where they can't turn it off and they can't look at something else, and they got to keep listening to me, and it'll sink in. However, that being said, I'm going to hand the floor to whoever else wants it. And yeah, thank you so much. Particularly, I'm going to call out some elected officials, since we are now after closing. So Merritt Stiles, thank you so much. Bardish Chagger and Ariel Kayabaga. Without getting into any of the political stuff, from an elected official point of view, you all have so much stuff to do, and it's very meaningful that you spend time here with us and listening. And I can speak for some of you that have done this at previous events of ours and listening, and it's probably not the kind of credit you're going to get. And I know the louder I start saying it to people in public, the more they're going to push back with 20,000 reasons that what I'm saying isn't suitable, but F them. And I appreciate it very much. And again, I'm going to pass the thing on. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my mute button. Somebody else talk. Bye.
Is there another surprise guest, or?
Or is it bedtime, Kevin?
No, so everybody, no. So what I meant, now we're off the clock, so everything goes now. Oh, I'll stop recording now. Let's do that, because this will be not part of